basically the main reason for accepting the offer was to avoid the absolute certainty of life without parole. If there was another option, then there would have been no reason to have accepted that offer.
At just 15 years old, Alyssa Bustamante committed one of the most chilling murders in American juvenile crime history. Living in a quiet Missouri town, she seemed like an ordinary teenager, into church, school, and journaling. But inside, Alyssa was battling dark, violent thoughts. On October 21, 2009, Alyssa lured her 9-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Oulton, into the woods behind her home. Elizabeth trusted Alyssa. They lived nearby, and Alyssa often played with her younger siblings. But this time was different. Alyssa had dug a grave 2 days earlier. She was planning a murder. Once in the woods, Alyssa strangled Elizabeth, slit her throat, and stabbed her. She then buried the little girl in the grave she had prepared. The motive? Alyssa later told investigators, "I just wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone." That same day, she wrote in her diary, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. It was amazing." Then she added, "Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL." The case shocked the nation. How could a teenage girl so casually take a life and enjoy it? Alyssa was arrested within days. Police found the grave, the diary, and other disturbing entries where she talked about depression, cutting, and a fascination with death. Mental health experts testified that she suffered from major depression and had attempted suicide in the past. Still, the brutality of her crime overshadowed any defense. When it came time for sentencing in 2012, Alyssa faced life in prison. Her attorneys argued for leniency due to her age and mental health, but the prosecution emphasized the premeditation, the cold motive, and the lack of remorse. In court, Alyssa sat emotionless. No tears, no visible regret. Her family cried, Elizabeth's family wept. But Alyssa, she barely moved. Her voice was flat when she apologized. "If I could give my life to bring her back, I would." The judge sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Because she was a minor, the death penalty was never on the table. Alyssa Bustamante remains behind bars today, and her story is a chilling reminder that evil can wear the face of an ordinary teenager.
Case 2. Brenda Spencer. I Don't Like Mondays. At just 16 years old, Brenda Ann Spencer committed a school shooting that would shock the entire nation and inspire a haunting quote that still echoes decades later. It was the morning of January 29, 1979, in San Diego, California. Children were arriving at Grover Cleveland Elementary School, just across the street from Brenda's home. Without warning, Brenda opened fire from her bedroom window using a .22 caliber rifle her father had given her for Christmas. Within minutes, she had killed the school's principal and a custodian and injured 8 children and a police officer. The most chilling part? When reporters called her during the standoff and asked why, she casually replied, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." That quote stunned the public. She had no known beef with the school, no target. It seemed completely random, and that made it all the more terrifying. Police eventually coaxed her into surrendering after several hours. She was arrested still in her pajamas, calm and expressionless. Brenda later told investigators she had been depressed, angry, and felt ignored. She described her home life as abusive and isolating. Still, the randomness and cruelty of the act couldn't be ignored. Brenda ended up getting charged with 2 counts of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder. Despite her age, prosecutors tried her as an adult. In court, she barely spoke. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The death penalty was not an option, partly due to her age and mental health status. Psychologists diagnosed her with epilepsy, depression, and possible brain damage from a past injury. But that didn't erase what she'd done, or the fear her actions caused. Decades later, in prison interviews, Brenda expressed remorse. She claimed she was high on alcohol and pills during the shooting, and that her infamous quote was just something stupid she said under pressure. But for many, the damage was already done. Brenda Spencer was one of the first female teen mass shooters in U.S. history. And while she didn't receive the death penalty, her case remains one of the darkest early examples of school violence committed by a girl who said she just didn't like Mondays.
Case 3. Paula Cooper, the youngest girl sentenced to death. At just 15 years old, Paula Cooper became the youngest person on death row in the United States in modern history. Her crime was brutal, and the public reaction was fierce. But what shocked the world even more was how young she was when she faced a death sentence. On May 14, 1985, in Gary, Indiana, Paula Cooper and 3 other teenage girls skipped school and made a deadly decision. Armed with a knife, they entered the home of 78-year-old Bible teacher Ruth Pelka, pretending to be interested in her lessons. Once inside, they robbed her and brutally attacked her. Paula stabbed Ruth 33 times with a butcher knife, while her friends looted the house for money and her car keys. Ruth died at the scene. All 4 girls were arrested within days, but it was Paula, the ringleader, who took the brunt of the punishment. The other girls received long prison sentences. Paula, however, was charged with murder and robbery, tried as an adult, and in 1986, sentenced to death by electric chair. The public was divided. Many were horrified by the crime and felt she deserved the harshest penalty. Others, including human rights advocates and even Pope John Paul II, argued that executing a child was inhumane. Over 2 million people signed petitions asking the state of Indiana to commute her sentence. Paula's reaction in court was silent. She showed little emotion as the sentence was read, but those who knew her said she was overwhelmed and scared. In prison, she transformed. She earned a GED, became a model inmate, and expressed deep remorse for her actions. She even developed a friendship with Ruth Pelga's grandson, who forgave her and began advocating for her life to be spared. In 1989, the Indiana Supreme Court overturned her death sentence, citing her age as a major factor. She was resentenced to 60 years in prison. Paula Cooper served nearly 27 years behind bars. In 2013, she was released on parole at age 43. Sadly, just 2 years later, in 2015, Paula died by suicide. Her case remains one of the most powerful examples of the American justice system's harsh treatment of juvenile offenders and how redemption, forgiveness, and tragedy can collide in the most unexpected ways.
Tia Skinner, the teenage mastermind who wanted her family dead. At just 17 years old, Tia Skinner orchestrated the brutal attack on her own family, and all because they didn't approve of her boyfriend. It happened in November 2010 in the quiet town of St. Clair County, Michigan. Tia was a high school honor student, a cheerleader, and a creative writer. But beneath the surface, she was seething. Her parents had forbidden her from seeing her boyfriend, Jonathan Kurtz, an 18-year-old with a criminal record. That decision sealed their fate. Fueled by teenage rebellion and obsession, Tia plotted revenge. She handed over a detailed hand-drawn map of her house to Kurtz and his friend James Preston, complete with escape routes and her parents' sleeping positions. The plan was simple: wait until everyone was asleep, break in through a window she'd leave unlocked, and kill her parents. On the night of November 12, 2010, they did just that. Tia pretended to be asleep as Kurtz and Preston broke in and stabbed her father and mother repeatedly. Her father, Terry Skinner, died from his injuries, but her mother, Mara Skinner, miraculously survived and later testified against her own daughter. Police found Tia outside her house, barefoot, pretending to be in shock. But her phone told a different story. Text messages revealed she had been in contact with the attackers before and during the murder. She had even expressed frustration when the plan hit delays. At her trial, the courtroom was stunned. Here was a soft-spoken teenage girl with good grades and no criminal history, now being accused of helping plan her father's murder. Her defense tried to paint her as an emotionally manipulated teen, but the jury wasn't convinced. Tia Skinner was found guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her reaction in court was chilling. No tears, no apology, just silence. Her surviving mother, through tears, said, "You betrayed us all." To this day, the case of Tia Skinner remains one of the most haunting examples of a teen consumed by love, rage, and manipulation, willing to sacrifice her own blood for the boy her parents said she couldn't have.
Michelle Carter, the girl who texted him to death. At just 17 years old, Michelle Carter sent the final push, not with her hands, but with her words. The story begins in Massachusetts, 2014. Michelle had been texting with Conrad Roy III, an 18-year-old struggling with severe depression. Their relationship was mostly digital, hundreds of texts, countless calls, but their bond was intense and toxic. Conrad had previously attempted suicide, and Michelle knew it. Still, instead of helping him seek treatment or alerting his family, she encouraged him to go through with it. Over the course of days leading up to his death, she sent message after message, urging him to just do it. On July 13, 2014, Conrad drove to a Kmart parking lot, ran a gasoline-powered water pump in his truck, and began inhaling carbon monoxide. At one point, he got out of the vehicle, frightened. Michelle, on the phone with him, told him to get back in. He did. He never got out again. Conrad Roy was found dead in his truck. Initially ruled a suicide, the case took a shocking turn when investigators uncovered thousands of text messages on his phone. What they found was chilling. Michelle not only encouraged Conrad's suicide, but even coached him on the method, lied to his family afterward, and even used his death to gain sympathy from her school friends. Prosecutors charged Michelle Carter with involuntary manslaughter, a rare charge in cases involving digital communication. At her trial, the evidence was damning. The judge called her actions wanton and reckless, especially the phone call where she told Conrad to return to the vehicle. Michelle was found guilty in 2017 and sentenced to 15 months in prison. She served 11 months and was released in 2020 for good behavior. Her reaction in court? Expressionless, cold, as if the weight of what she had done hadn't landed yet. Michelle Carter's case became one of the most infamous examples of digital manipulation leading to death. It sparked debates about mental health, technology, and the law's ability to keep up with 21st century crimes. She didn't swing a weapon. She never laid a hand on him. But with one text, "Get back in," Michelle Carter became a teenage killer. At just 14 years old, Clare Miller committed a crime so disturbing, it shocked the quiet community of Manheim Township, Pennsylvania. It was the early hours of February 22, 2021. Clare quietly entered the bedroom of her 19-year-old sister, Helen, who had cerebral palsy and was nonverbal, and stabbed her in the neck while she slept. Afterward, Clare called 911 herself,
sobbing and confessing, "I stabbed my sister." Police arrived to find Clare standing outside, her pants soaked in blood. Inside the house, they discovered Helen's body, still in bed, covered in blood and a pillow pressed against her face. She was pronounced dead shortly after. What made this case even more shocking was Clare's digital trail. Just hours before the murder, she posted TikToks, laughed with friends online, and even joked about being crazy. Some clips went viral after the crime, with users horrified by the cheerful tone so close to the brutal act. Clare showed no clear motive, no history of abuse, no long-standing tension with her sister. Prosecutors claimed she struggled with mental health and a growing obsession with homicide and darkness, possibly influenced by disturbing online content. But no one could have imagined it would lead here. She was charged as an adult with criminal homicide. In court, her appearance was vacant, her expression cold. She pleaded not guilty, but was later found guilty of first-degree murder. In 2023, Clare Miller was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. No warning signs, no second chances. Clare's story sparked national debate about teen mental health, violent content online, and how a child could commit such an unthinkable act. She didn't lash out in anger. There was no fight. But in one quiet moment, Clare Miller became one of the youngest and most chilling teen killers in recent memory. As the truth unfolds and the faces behind the headlines are revealed, one thing becomes chillingly clear. Some of the deadliest crimes came from the minds of teenagers we least expected. But this is only the beginning. There are more shocking stories, darker secrets, and disturbing twists still to come. Subscribe now and turn on notifications because the next case might be even more haunting than the last. This is Criminal Profiles, and we're just getting started.